So one recommended path for a content method, this is just one path. It really depends on where you're going, but this is something that I sort of see as potential success, is you want to determine your initial data governance content for best practices. Like, all right, we're going to focus on, what do you want to focus on to start? Maybe if you buy into my pitch that the inventory is important, maybe you want to start with the dictionary and your inventory, right? Determine your champions and what organizations are excited about doing it. Enrollment really wants to do it, so let's have them start it. Create some initial data stewards group, right? Maybe you can co-opt an existing group that's already focused on security or an ERP implementation or something and use those folks, or just create a committee around the organizational scope you're starting. Select the knowledge base tool that you're going to use, a framework to put that on. Identify sort of a simple communication process for the stewardship within that framework, right? So a tool like the Data Cookbook sort of has that out of the box, but if you're going to use your own spreadsheets, how do you manage that? How do you manage requests and approval and all that kind of stuff, and updating of it? But then we want to get into content. So I recommend, as just one recommended path again, is that start with that data system inventory within the scope area, right? So figure out what are the data systems that we have that you can sort of figure out how to bring in the technical metadata from that, or documentation around that technical metadata. Why do I say to start with that? First of all, it's like, it's an important aspect of this, right? And but it's also easier in lots of ways. Like, this is a known thing. Like, we know these are the systems, and here's the data, the technical metadata that we have in all these systems, and you can bring that in, and suddenly you've, pretty quickly created a whole bunch of content, right? That hasn't required a lot of thought, right? Maybe there's still effort to kind of like seek down and track down the little shadow systems that you have, but at least of the things that that's a good place to start. Now you want to start populating your data dictionary, right? So if you've got things that you can import, existing stuff, that you can seed it with that you've already gotten, if you have some known definitions that you really want, you can go do that. Another place to really start is to pick 10 or 20 critical data deliverables of your institution, like maybe your fact books or if you're focused on enrollment, certain enrollment reports. Document those data deliverables. As part of that, document the definitions within them, and that'll really help seed your data dictionary, and also create some content in your data deliverables repository. But focus on that, and with some governance structure around that. Once you have that built, then think about implementing a data request process, right? Because there's better models and focuses in there. Then you might want to create the data policy repository. So create those policies. Now, you may choose to put policy first if that's the thing that you've decided your prioritization. But I think creating the inventory and having this information, and then you can create a policy that you can apply that inventory. Like I mentioned, GDPR and privacy. Like, if I create a privacy policy that says, all data of this particular sort of type or use, needs to be tagged it's considered private, and then you can't do X, Y, and Z. Like, that's really great, but without that inventory, we don't have anything to go apply that policy to. We don't have anything to mark as private and work. So I think if you can do inventory first, or parallel at least, like, if you focus on policy, it can really hang you up a bit. The next is to tackle data quality. So data quality can be really important, but in some ways, again, like, having that inventory in place first can help build on that. Now, there's stuff that you can do with quality as you go. Like, as you define things, you can say, what are the valid values, or is this required, or sample data, or whatever. You can do that as you go, but major data quality issues are not. And one exception to that, if data quality is a real problem, think about implementing the quality issue resolution process. So having a place for people to report data quality problems is probably not a complicated thing, and that will help to figure out, like, what you want to do from a quality monitoring. And then last thing is to just continue to expand the scope and expand the content. So this is one recommended path, and please don't take this as gospel, but this is something that I see as successful, again, focusing on sort of non-controversial things first to get things started.